Hey, Ron here from Military Images Magazine, welcoming you to a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today, I want to start this episode with a bit of role playing. Let's say you're a politician. You're about to give a speech. You learn about a tragedy that affects the nation. How do you tell the audience that you're about to address? Most political figures would begin their comments by referencing the tragedy and then moving on to the main topic. They might not ever mention the tragedy again. But I found a speech by Abraham Lincoln that flips that script. He started with the main topic, the topic he came to talk about, and then skillfully mentioned the tragedy as part of his comments to reinforce his speech. So here's the story. On April 19th, he appears in Baltimore and he speaks to a group that has gathered in support of Union soldiers. A week earlier at Fort Pillow in Tennessee, reports of the massacre of Black Union soldiers makes front page news across the nation. As you might imagine, with the pace of news at that time in the 19th century, the breaking news, the details of the story a week later are still coming out. It's still fresh in the minds of Americans. So, question becomes, how does Lincoln handle this in his speech? Well, he doesn't take the way out where he just mentions it in the beginning. This is where he weaves it into his text. He doesn't say, his remarks are relatively short. He doesn't say a lot, but I want to read it to you just so you can see how he manages this moment. So here we go. He starts out, calling to mind that we are in Baltimore, we cannot fail to note that the world moves. Cheers from the audience. Looking upon the many people met here to care as best they may for the soldiers of the Union, it recurs at once that the same soldiers could not pass through Baltimore 3 years ago. He's referring to the Baltimore riot or the Pratt Street riot. Blessings on the men who wrought this great change and the fair women who have sustained them in it. But the change suggests more. It suggests a far wider change. When the war began, neither party nor any man expected that it would last until now. We're in April of 1864. Each expected that it would end in some way long ere this. Neither was it then expected that slavery would be affected by it. But here we are. The war goes on yet, and slavery has been somewhat affected. Man proposes and God disposes. We want a good definition of the word liberty. We all declare for liberty, but we all do not mean the same thing. With some, liberty means to do as he pleases with the product of his labor, while others call it liberty to do what they please with the products of other men's labor and denounce it as a destruction of all liberty because they cannot do so. They are incompatible, the one being liberty, the other tyranny. To illustrate, the shepherd drives the wolf from the sheep's throat and the sheep thanks him, but the wolf denounces him as the destroyer of liberty, especially as the sheep was a black one. The wolf and the sheep disregard to the definition of liberty. The same difference exists at the North today. Hence we see thousands passing from the yoke of bondage, held by some as liberty and denounced by others. Lincoln continues, the people of Maryland have been doing something to define the word liberty, and we thank them, for the Wolf's Dictionary is repudiated. It is not becoming for a president to make a speech of great length, but there is one subject filling the minds of the American people to which I will revert. The painful occurrence reported at Fort Pillow, the massacre of hundreds of colored soldiers at that place. We think proper to give some explanation of the matter, as it may be thought the government is not doing its duty. In the beginning of the war, it was questionable whether to employ that class. When I deemed it my duty to employ them, I did so, and I am responsible for that act. And I stand before my country, history, and my God, to whom I will have to answer, and I will not shrink from it. Having made them soldiers, all the protection given to the white soldiers is due to them and shall be given to them. The government has not received official notice of this massacre at Fort Pillow, but we believe it, and when we make a sure thing of it, we will make the retribution as severe. We do not wish to take a white soldier of the Confederates and shoot him upon the assumption of the fact of the Fort Pillow affair. If the massacre has taken place, as we believe, it will not fail to reach the proof. Then we cannot take a man who has been captured at Gettysburg and make him suffer. We must first know of it was the act of an individual or the policy of their government. If the latter, the retribution will be sure. So there's Lincoln weaving the story of Fort Pillow into his larger narrative about support for the troops, about the introduction of soldiers of color into the Union Army, and then the Fort Pillow. He's basically saying, hey, listen, the news has just come in. We hear it. We don't have enough information yet to know what we will do and when we will act. Was it the actions of a single person? Was it the actions of the Confederate government? We don't know. But when we get more information, we will surely act. So it's an interesting, I find it to be an interesting way for Lincoln to handle this breaking news by actually bringing into the narrative, and he ends that way with it. And of course, the crowd appreciates the spirit of his comments, according to this news report in the Baltimore Sun. So there you have it for today, the story of Lincoln speaking on the Fort Pillow Massacre and how he handled breaking news in a speech in a slightly unconventional way compared to other politicians. So there you have it. Take care. Until the next episode, happy trails.